In this video I'm going to build this musical MIDI mech, this time inspired by Bill Making Stuff's Big Bot Bash. So in this challenge you get a list of words and a dice, and you have to build something based on the words that you get given. So I was given Rust God, Godlike, Hands Are Hard, Hydraulic, Spidey and Unlucky, and I'm going to use number 12 to give me 12 touch points on my instrument. So I'm not just building a mech, I'm also building a musical instrument, and all the music in this video was made using the final mech build that you're watching being made now. Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm using a Spoke Mini and a Raspberry Pi Pico to handle all of the hardware and software. And because I need 12 touch points on my build, I just need 12 resistors soldered onto this whiteboard here. And this whiteboard allows me to make touch sensing interface devices really easily. It's super simple to do this. If you know how to solder, then you can easily make capacitive touch sensing projects. This is called Spoke board, and it's something I came up with, and this is the sort of DIY build your own version of it. There's a few other versions which I will link to in the video description. So once you've soldered it and chopped off all the little legs to make it nice and neat, you can admire your handiwork like this. Oh, look how neat that is. And then you can get to deciding what your touch objects are going to be. Now this board works with anything metallic. It works also with non-metallic things, so you can do stuff like fruit and vegetables and mushrooms and plants. It works with conductive inks, conductive threads. You can 3D print conductive objects and use those. But for now, for this project, I'm just going to use various metallic things that I've got lying around. And there's two ways to connect them to the board, and this version I'm using electrical terminal blocks, which are a really easy way to just screw things together. So if you unscrew the little bolt in the middle, it goes out, and then you place an object in that hole and tighten it, and you've got a touch object. This part here is the inside of a cheap motor. This is just a random copper rod that I found. What else did I add? All these power adapter thingies, which I'm never ever going to use. I'll probably need that exact one next week for something, but doesn't matter. And I thought that looks like a good little claw, because hands are hard, so I'm making it easy by my hand. And then that last bit there, that square looking thing, is a paperclip. Some other objects I decided to use is a copper pipe, the outside of a motor. This is a slightly larger terminal block thingy, which has got a nice bronze part to it. And these ones I'm going to solder directly to the wire, just so that I don't have so many big chunky electrical blocks all over the model. So this is just a fuse, like a normal household fuse. This stuff is crimping stuff for Molex connectors, which look pretty cool. This is the inside of that terminal block. Sometimes you can solder directly to objects, and sometimes you just need to wrap the wire around a hole in the object or around the object itself. So with this ring, it wouldn't actually solder very easily. So I wrapped the wire around it and soldered the wire really tightly. And as long as there's like a metal connection, it would still work as a touch sensor. So I've got my board ready, and I need to start thinking about the actual shape of the mech. The biggest starting point for this was that the legs had to be spidery or spidey-y. So I was thinking about the house moving castle part, where the castle falls apart and at some point it ends up as like a rickety plank with legs. So that was the sort of shape I was aiming for. And in hindsight, I would have done this bit slightly different. I decided to solder all of my touch objects straight to the board, straight away, before I'd even built the model. And I spent more time untangling all of these cables than I did building the model. So I think I would have done this step slightly different. I always like to put a little bit of hot glue on top of the solders, just to give it a little bit more strength, just in case, you never know. So this box was going to be the main shape, or the main body of my mech, and I flipped it inside out because the cardboard, the waxy shiny side, wouldn't be as easy to glue or paint onto. So you can use hot glue on the PCB, that's perfectly fine. There are holes for mounting it properly, but I didn't really need to do that. So I turned the box inside out, and yeah, I only used hot glue on this project. I didn't use any super glues or PVAs. I just wanted to do it pretty quick and speedy, so nothing but hot glue. So that's the body just about done. I still wasn't quite sure at this point what direction I was going to go in. So I spent a lot of time just getting other boxes and other objects and placing them together and seeing if I liked the shape. This big ring, part of the Big Bot Bash commands was making it godlike. So I thought this big ring would work as like a halo or like a crown above my robot's head. And because it was Spidey-y, that copper rod looked a bit like a long arm that could like sense, almost like a feeler on a spider. And as I started building, I started deciding what actual function this bot had, because this will be part of a world I'm building called the Beating Birch, which is a project myself and Nick Murray are working on. And the world is about a society who lives around this giant birch tree, and they live inside it and underneath it, and the birch tree makes music and it sings, and if you sing back, if you resonate with the tree, then the tree provides what you need. So whether it's energy or knowledge or sustenance or all that kind of stuff, you've got to, if you're not in tune with the tree and the sounds of nature, then you won't prosper. So it's like it's a world where it's not dystopian, it's utopian. I think we need more utopian stories out there. So these end up being the arms. These are pen lids, and the yellow bits are parts of knitting needles. And these are the hydraulics, I'm claiming them to be, of the robot, because that was one of the commands from Sir Bill to make them hydraulic-y. And this part I decided was going to be like a harvesting robot. So in my story, in this world, it harvests energy from different parts of the landscape, and the hydraulics, it will pick up pods of energy and harvest them so that they can go back and be used to power things. I sped this a bit up. The cables, I spent so much time on the cables that I was going to try and make them part of the build, but they ended up being so messy and tangled up and bulky that I decided they needed to be hid. So I tidied them up a bit, and I'll make a case for them in a second. Now this part of the video is just adding the code, and I do this in real time just to show how easy it is. So I'm using something called CircuitPython, and CircuitPython is like the coding language that lives on the board. And to set that up, if you blink, you miss it. So I just did it then. I dragged a file onto the board, and now it's setting it up to run CircuitPython. So that's done. We're going to be using two libraries. One is called MIDI to control all the MIDI stuff, and another one called HID, because at some point I might want to use this robot to play games instead of play music. So I just dragged those over onto the folder. And then this is the example code, so I'm going to open up this code, just copy that code and open a file in Notepad. I don't need any special code to coding environment. So copy and paste and save, and then I'm going to test it on a website. So this is a MIDI website. I'm just looking at how dirty that screen is. That's terrible. So now if I touch these points, it will send MIDI, and if I had it recording sound, you would hear a piano. So the software works, and it's ready to start building up the rest of our mech. So in order to hide all the cables, I used more plastic packaging, which is a really useful material to use, because they normally have quite interesting shapes. They're normally not flat, so they can really help add interesting textures to these kind of builds. And wherever I had a wire sticking out, I glued it down just to give it the wire a bit more strength. You don't want them coming out of your model and just making your touch point not useful anymore. I knew that my spider legs, whatever they were going to be, wouldn't be strong enough to actually hold my build up. So I decided in my story that this robot is going to be at home at a charging station and resting on some rocks, so that I don't have to rely on my delicate little spider legs to actually hold the model up. Especially as this will be a functional model, I'll be playing it and touching it, and those legs, they can't really be load-bearing. So I found these red plastic bits. I'm not quite sure what they're for, but they worked quite nicely to make some legs. And yeah, I'm still envisioning the House Moving Castle where it all collapsed and it had these fragile-looking legs all over the place. I did a lot of embellishments and lots of little details off camera, either because I didn't think it was interesting enough to record, or I just forgot to hit record. Yeah, you can use your imagination for all the tiny little details that are on here. So once I've got all the bits ready, I cover it in a mixture of Mod Podge and black paint, which is a fairly standard model kit bashing technique to give it a nice finish and to basically prime it ready for painting. So this is before I've covered it all in stuff, and this is it after. And it currently looks more like the River God from Spirited Away than anything from any other Ghibli movie. But yeah, now it's ready to start painting. I'm not a very good painter. It's something I need to practice a bit more. So I'm not going to go in great detail of this. But I did lots of highlights in white, which is quite useful to sort of figure out which parts of the model will stand out more when it comes to adding details later on. And I started with like a white and a green paint. I changed it at some point during the process because it was going to be too green. There was going to be some fake grass everywhere, and it all just would have blended in and not looked very good. So it will end up being more blue and pink rather than green and pink. And the hydraulics and anything related to actually collecting the energy from this story, I wanted to be pink and more vibrant to sort of distinguish it from just the rest of the build. So yeah. A little bit of paint on the rocks. Like I said, I'm not the best painter in the world, so I would not take any tips from me. So go watch other makers who are better at this than I am. Go and watch North of the Border, or Miscast, or Stusson Studios, or Bill making stuff, or Dan Does, and I'm sure there's more who I am forgetting, but there's a whole wealth of wonderful, inspiring people out there to go and check out. So yeah, do that. I spent a lot of time going into all the little nooks and crannies of things and figuring out what colour looks good and what isn't, and then I ended up with this, which looks yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. I forgot to film adding the fake grass, but this is my final design, my final big bot bash, and I really enjoyed the process. I never would have made this if I wasn't given those instructions and words to try and fulfill. So thank you, Bill, for doing the big bot bash. Really cool, fun thing to do.